Hello, it's me, Brodie McLeod, again on YouTube because I've got nothing else better to do. Anyway, right, so before you watch this video, I would advise that it contains quite sensitive content, and if you are of a disposition where things might trigger you or make you feel emotional surrounding the topics of abuse of minors, institutionally and individually in any context, then you don't have to watch this video, and I would encourage you to watch something else. If you think that you've got an interest in maintaining a cohesive society where people are free, honest, open and unabated without being manipulated, you might find this of interest. In a nutshell, I saw a post this morning on my Instagram feed or whatever that said that China have a rule that child sex offenders face the death penalty. Now, I'm a staunch opponent of capital punishment. I don't think that capital punishment is appropriate for any crime, really. Those are my views. I won't elaborate or explain or justify them to validate my opinion. I just don't think that. I think people need to kind of focus on defective personality and behavioural disorders, which is possible. It's shown to be possible, and therapy and kind of a chance to have healthy, consensual, loving relationships, and not things which involve a power dynamic or some kind of really distressing situation which destroys people's lives. So I've made a canvas about it, and I'm just going to read that to you. Does talk about David Icke books, right? Because essentially he is, in my opinion, a counterintelligence agent. So what he does is he takes some bullshit and some stuff that would never ever get published because it's true, and puts it together. And then when you ask, where did you hear about that? They say, and you say, I heard it from David Icke, the same guy that thinks there's a hatchery under Balmoral Castle where, you know, hybrid reptilian aliens emanate from. Then they'll say that all the child sex trafficking stuff's a load of bullshit, you know. So I don't know, like if he's a credible source, but I'm using his thesis and his examples because, having read quite a lot of his books in my early years, my 20s, a lot of it seemed quite plausible to me, and my lived experience is that that's almost definitely been something which I've noticed has had involvement by various parties you wouldn't consider to be involved, institutions of great importance, and supposedly ones which we imbue with a great level of trust and reassurance and reliability. Without being accusatory to anybody or pointing the finger or being slanderous or libelous or defamatory, I'm going to leave that, my opinion and my lived experience, there and read you what it says. So the article is entitled "The Mechanics of Control, Institutional Paedophilia and the Death Penalty Paradox." So that, before I go on the paradox, you know, David Icke says that people are controlled and coerced and manipulated by a forced, kind of filmed incident involving children. And sorry, that's my brother ringing me. I'm sure it'll stop in a minute. Just wait a minute. I don't know how to. I've hit decline, but it's still ringing for some reason. It will stop in a bit. I'm busy, mate. Thanks. I'll phone you back in a bit. So yeah, the mechanics of control, institutional paedophilia and the death penalty. So David Icke says people get forced and blackmailed into it, and they control politicians and bankers and the judiciary system, and they control people by sort of blackmailing them, basically. So you've got the caveat, or like the kind of weird another juxtaposition, which is that there is a kind of you could say that if you agreed with capital punishment, which I don't, that paedophiles should be less likely to commit crimes against minors if that stronger penalty is in place. It's one hypothesis. The other hypothesis is that if there is an institutional network blackmailing people, then they will be, they will be stronger, maybe, these networks, if they face more severe penalties. I'm not endorsing in any way, taking a hard line against this, but I'm just sort of looking at the two different potential hypothetical scenarios, and those hypotheses consist of individuals committing crimes and facing severe penalties for doing it, and that mitigating the level of crimes by the severity of the punishment being a good thing. And maybe if the institutional basis of the networking requiring sort of a complex interconnected group of manipulative people, actually it might supercharge the whole thing. But anyway, it's called The Mechanistics of Control, Institutional Paedophilia and the Death Penalty Paradox. Part 1, the Ickean Frameworks. The following section details the assertions made by David Icke regarding the function of institutional paedophilia. These concepts form the basis for the subsequent analysis. I'm not an anti-Semite. I don't believe David Icke's assertions, and I like I've expressly mentioned, I think a lot of the stuff in his books is bullshit, demonstrably, but I think some of it's true too. And if you read them, you'll probably agree with me. So the control mechanism, blackmail. Icke asserts that paedophilia is not merely a crime committed by isolated individuals, but a systemic tool used by a global ruling elite to maintain power, blackmail subordinates, and generate negative energy. So a compromat. He claims that many people in positions of power, politicians, judges, celebrities, and business leaders, are invited or coerced into participating in illicit sexual acts, often involving minors, which are covertly recorded. The trap: once an individual has participated, the hidden hand or cabal possesses incriminating evidence, blackmail material that ensures the individual's total obedience. If they ever deviate from the elite's agenda or try to speak out, the evidence would be released to destroy them. Selection process. So Icke has suggested that the system specifically selects individuals with these predications for high office, because they are easier to control than those with a clean moral compass. Then he's got some shit about energy harvesting. I'll just leave that because that's bollocks, you see. Spiders over protectionism might have some truth in it. So he contends that these rings are institutional because they rely on the cooperation of social services, the police, intelligence agencies, and the media to operate with impunity, saying that there's allegations surface, they're systematically suppressed by the establishment because exposing one thread would kind of unravel the entire web. He talks about Jimmy Savile, frequently points to the late BBC presenter as a primary example, claims he was speaking out about Savile long before the scandals became public. David Icke says, using Savile's decades of protected abuse as proof, the establishment protects its key assets, who procure children for the elite. Then you've got Satanism and secret societies. So Icke thinks paedophile rings are linked to secret societies and satanic ritual abuse. I don't know about that, really, but secret societies acts as like a compartmentalised pipeline where lower level members are unaware of the activities of the top, but the inner circles are unified by these dark rituals involving minors. So part 2, the Chinese context. 24 to 26. To analyse the impact of these theories on reality, we must look at the recent legal precedents set by the People's Republic of China. Throughout the late 2024 and 25, China's Supreme Court aggressively reinforced its zero tolerance policy. So do the executions. In November 24 and May 25, the state executed multiple individuals for child sexual abuse. They weren't merely prison sentences, they were capital punishments carried out against teachers, labourers and organised online predators who used coercion and mental control. The standard, the SPC, has clarified that crimes involving the abuse of power, such as by teachers, use the internet to lure victims, or cases causing severe mental anguish or suicide will be met with the death penalty too. The message, the state's explicit intent, is deterrence, raising the cost of the crime to the ultimate price, the life of the perpetrator. But the divergent hypothesis, right? So if we accept David Icke's premise that a hidden, powerful group uses paedophilia to control the visible leadership, how does the Chinese death penalty alter the equation? The outcome splits into two diametrically opposed probabilities. So there's one hypothesis, right, which would say that the purification or disruption of the networks, that logically high stakes break the chain of command. So in this scenario, death penalty acts as a legitimate firewall that severs the spider's web Icke describes. So the fixer problem, the institutional rings rely on a vast network of procurers, drivers, security and location scouts, and they're often low to mid-level criminals or corrupt officials. If the penalty for involvement is execution, the risk premium becomes too high. Organised crime groups, which are generally profit motivated, may abandon the market because a single mistake results in a firing squad rather than bribable prison sentence. So the asset liability for the hidden hand compromised politician is only really useful if they're alive and in office. So the state apparatus is aggressively hunting and executing offenders to satisfy public outrage. Every compromised asset becomes a ticking time bomb, and if a high-ranking official is caught, the cabal can't really easily protect them without exposing the deeper conspiracy. So the deterrence of entry, this selection process Icke mentions, relies on finding people willing to cross the moral line. However, if crossing that line carries a credible threat of state execution, even those with dark predications... Oh, sorry, I had to stop there. Somebody was doing my observations at the door. Deterrence, I can't remember where I was up to. Deterrence of entry, the selection progress. So Icke mentions relies on finding people willing to cross the moral line. However, if crossing that line carries a credible threat of state execution, even those with dark predications may suppress them out of sheer self-preservation, starving the ring of new recruits. So conclusion A, the law acts as a chaotic variable that makes the maintenance of a stable long-term blackmail ring logistically impossible. But hypothesis B is what is called the iron grip, like a supercharged control. So this logic implies that absolute terror creates absolute loyalty. So in this scenario, which aligns more closely with the darker aspects of Icke's worldview, the death penalty does not stop the blackmail, it actually weaponizes it. So from scandal to survival. In Western nations, a politician exposed for paedophilia faces prison and social ruin. They might eventually crack and confess to get a lighter sentence or witness protection. But in China, under this new enforcement, exposure means death. There's no plea bargain for a capital crime of this nature. The ultimate bind: if a handler records a rising official committing a capital offence, that official's no longer just protecting their career, they're fighting for their life. The blackmailer holds the literal power of execution. The official becomes a fanatic defender of the conspiracy, not out of loyalty, but out of existential terror, so they'll sign any policy, betray any national interest and suppress any dissent to keep the evidence buried, because the alternative is immediate state-sanctioned death. So monopolising the market by executing the freelancers and unorganised predators, as seen in recent news, the state or the corrupt elements within it effectively eliminates the competition. It consolidates control of the abuse networks into the hands of the only group powerful enough to offer protection from the law, the ruling elite itself. And by that I don't think he means, or I'm certainly not implying the Chinese government, but wealthy people basically, and influential people, whoever you define the ruling elite to be. Yes, that's not a slight against a nation or its government, to be clear. Conclusion B, so the death penalty removes the middle ground. It ensures that anyone involved in the ring is bound to it by blood oath of silence, effectively hardening the institutional aspect of the abuse. So the psychic cost and the mental anguish. So regardless of which hypothesis proves true, the psychological dimension critical to Icke's concept of louche is amplified by this legal landscape. So the victims, the judicial focus on severe mental anguish acknowledges the shattering of the human psyche. In Icke's view, this system is designed to produce this anguish. The victims are not just physically harmed, they're psychologically deconstructed. The state's recognition of this anguish legitimizes the severity of the trauma, but does not necessarily heal it. The perpetrator's terror, if hypothesis B is true, the perpetrators themselves are living in a state of high frequency anxiety and dread. They're trapped in a high stakes psychological cage, knowing that a single slip, a single leak, or a change in their handler's favour results in their execution. You get societal fear. The public nature of these executions generates a collective vibration of fear and vengeance. While intended as justice, Icke might argue that the cycle of abuse followed by the ritual of state execution feeds the very low vibrational atmosphere that the archons, whoever the fuck they are, thrive upon. Yeah, I mean, some of it's bullshit, but society remains locked still in a dynamic of predator and prey, crime and punishment, never transcending trauma. So regardless of what you think about, I don't know, I personally think capital punishment is understandable, you know, why people might vote for that, if they did get a vote for it in China. But I don't think that anybody defective person, you know, is beyond repeal. And the stats for me that I've read, having witnessed and quite a lot of institutional abuse myself, I would say kind of, I don't know, like every defective person is capable of rehabilitation, I believe. And punishment, if you look at reoffending rates, punishing somebody, making them uncomfortable, hurting their feelings, depriving them of their liberty and quality of life doesn't make them grow into creative and beautiful, wonderful people that are a brilliant asset to society. It creates kind of dejected, isolated, manipulative, and aggressive, depressed people. You know, you take no accountability for their actions and just don't care about anything, you know. So yeah, there's 18 minutes of that. I'm going to phone my brother back and see how he's doing. Cheers.